We are going to try to begin to answer the age-old question, which is better, straight 6 or V8? First, let's start off by explaining the rivalry between these two and why the argument at times gets so heated. The inline 6 is naturally balanced. This engine acts like a separate pair of 3-cylinder engines. One cylinder fires from the first 3, then a second cylinder fires from the back 3, making for a very smooth performing engine. Millions of these engines were sold around the world with great success. However, if this was such a success, why aren't there any inline 8 cylinders around? Well, problems began arising with the concept, such as fuel distribution and the increased amount of hood space required. So the engineers came up with a canted or V engine block configuration. This allowed for not only less hood space required, but also lowered the center of gravity. So with 2 more cylinders and better weight distribution, the obvious choice is the V8, right? Enter Jack Clifford. He was an aerospace engineer who believed the inline 6 had better torque characteristics over the V8 configuration. This, for obvious reasons, seemed extremely far-fetched. The V8s not only had 2 more cylinders, but at the time, were now coming out with overhead valves to boot. Jack was met with much criticism. Well, he prepared the inline 6 for NASCAR, and not just any inline 6, but a flathead inline 6. He placed this in the now legendary Hudson Hornet. For many years in multiple classes, this was nearly unbeatable. He also prepared a Hudson Hornet known as the Satan of Morimar, with an inline 6 for hill climb competition. It raced against many V8s and actually beating them in many cases. This cemented a model for his fans. 6 equals 8. So let's take a look at 2 nearly identical cars. Both Plymouth Dusters, both with the bulletproof Torqueflight transmissions. But one has the 225 Slant 6, and the other has the small block 318 V8. We are going to determine the differences of each over the coming weeks and episodes, as well as restore, upgrade, and improve these classic vehicles, then test their performance head to head. But first, let's take a look at what's under the hood of each. Here is the 1973 318 small block V8, known as one of the most diverse and well-rounded engines of all time. It can be everything from a great fuel economy engine, or push upwards of 400 naturally aspirated horsepower and everything in between. In its stock form, it has around 200 to 230 peak horsepower and 300 to 340 pound-feet of torque. As you can see, it's pretty well stocked. Optima red top battery, it has standard front disc brakes, it's an original AC car although currently not working. It does however have a Holley 4-barrel 600 CFM carburetor, and that's on top of an aluminum Edelbrock intake manifold. We'll be performing both major and minor upgrades over the coming weeks. Here is the 1971 225 Slant 6 engine. These engines are known to be one of the most bulletproof engines ever made. With almost every internal part being over-engineered, these could and do last upwards of 500,000 miles. In stock form, it has around 120 to 145 peak horsepower and around 180 to 215 pound-feet of torque. Here is a rebuilt Carter 2-barrel carburetor connected to the 4-barrel aluminum Offenhauser intake manifold by way of a 4-barrel to 2-barrel adapter plate. It needed some shaving and epoxy to fit just right. The spark plug cables are the 9mm MSD wires with a Petronix HEI distributor kit and ignition coil. It has a new AC Delco 65 amp alternator. Alongside it is a Summit 8-pound fuel pressure regulator. It has a new aluminum radiator and Optima red top battery. It has an upgraded hydraulic brake system. It's a Mopar Performance power brake booster and master cylinder. This is connected to a Willwood brake proportioning valve. Just under it is a Mopar Performance long tube ceramic headers. They are extremely hard to find and sound incredible. There are new gates hoses up at the top. It is a stock power steering unit. This is also an original AC car, but is currently removed. It will be reinstalled in future episodes. Now let's line them up and test their acceleration in a head-to-head comparison. This will be approximately 200 to 250 yards, about the equivalent of a light-to-light race. This run is the 1971 Plymouth Duster with the 225 Slant or Inline 6. This run is the 1973 Plymouth Duster with the 318 small block V8. As you can see, these two are very evenly matched, with the Slant 6 barely pushing out the win in the end. To some this may be shocking, but to Inline 6 fans, this is not surprising at all. Granted, the Inline 6 has some small upgrades, and the 318 didn't exactly shift perfect, but the Slant 6 still reached higher speeds quicker through every gear all the way up to third. Next time we will compare a longer stretch of road, as well as some slalom and canyon run comparisons. If you liked what you saw and would like to see more of these comparisons, as well as restoration and upgrades, like and subscribe.